Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel, and before you go and spend hundreds on neutral density filters, I need to show you something. That image you just saw looked like a long exposure, didn't it? The kind of shot you typically need a 10-stop ND filter to capture. But it's not. No filters, no sensor overheating, no hot pixels, and I had complete creative control over the final result after I left the field. This was produced using a technique called mean stacking, and if you're new to it, it could well change how you approach long exposure photography, especially when it comes to subjects like storms, clouds, and anything you might already be shooting as a time lapse. I've been exploring ways to create more contemplative, sort of meditative imagery with my time-lapse work. Something that goes beyond just documenting movement and instead captures the emotional weight of a scene. And this technique has completely transformed how I approach that. The traditional approach to long exposures for most photographers, is to invest in a good filter system. And we're talking £200, £300, £400 for quality glass. Stack your NDs to get the density you need, calculate your exposure, hope the light doesn't change mid-shot, and commit. Because once you press that shutter, you're locked in. Now, I never went down that route. I discovered mean stacking early in my photography journey, and it completely eliminated the need for me to invest in expensive filters. With traditional long exposure, you're potentially running your sensor continuously for minutes, maybe even hours. And with that, your batteries drain faster, especially in cold weather. Heat builds up, hot pixels appear, noise becomes more apparent, and you're still limited by the filters you brought with you. But mean stacking is a technique that eliminates all of those problems. It costs nothing beyond the software you probably already own, and gives you way more creative flexibility than you've ever had with long exposure photography. Now, the concept of mean stacking is beautifully simple. Instead of shooting one long exposure, you shoot a sequence of normal exposures, i.e. a time lapse, and then you use software to blend all of those frames together into a single image. Now, if you're already shooting time lapses, then you've got everything you need. You're just going to process that footage in a completely different way. Here's what's actually happening. When you stack images and use mean averaging, Photoshop looks at every pixel position across all your frames and calculates the average value. So let's say a cloud is in one position in frame 1 and a different position in frame 50. The final image shows its journey between those positions, all blended together. That's where that beautiful ethereal motion blur comes from. You're seeing the entire journey of the storm compressed into a single moment. But here's where it gets really clever. Because you're averaging dozens, maybe even hundreds of frames together, all the bad stuff, your sensor noise, your hot pixels, your random artifacts, they all get mathematically cancelled out. Each frame contributes clean information, and the errors don't stack up. They disappear. And because each individual frame is properly exposed, you never blow your highlights, your shadows are never crushed, every frame is captured at optimal settings, and then they all combine to create something that would be impossible to capture in a single traditional long exposure. And the best part is you get to decide how long your exposure is after the fact. So, if you want the equivalent of let's say a 30-second long exposure, just stack 50 frames. You want 2 minutes, stack 200 frames. You have complete control in post-production, and you can even create multiple versions from the same source material, and all without ever using a single filter. Let me show you exactly how this works in Photoshop by using the storm sequence you saw at the beginning. So I've got my time-lapse sequence. In this case, it's about 100 raw files shot over the course of the storm's development, and I've already gone through and processed them all in Lightroom, and I've kept the development consistent across all frames. Now, in Photoshop, I'm going to load these frames as layers. So we go to File, Scripts, load files into Stack. Select the range of frames you want to use, and it could be 10 frames, it could be 100, and I'll explain why the number of frames matters in a moment. Be aware if you click the checkbox next to attempt to automatically align source images, because if you shot a time lapse where the storm or the clouds dominate the frame, you may well end up with some pretty funky results. And this reminds me, before we go any further, I need to give you an important warning about processing time. See, the more frames you stack and the larger those files are, the longer it's going to take Photoshop to process that main stack, not to mention the time it takes to open all those frames and then try to automatically align them all in the first place.
One eternity later.
We're easily talking potentially, 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes or more if you're working with hundreds of full resolution TIFF files at 300 dpi that are larger than 20 megapixels. And if you decide you don't like the result and want to try a different number of frames, yeah, you're starting that wait all over again. So before you commit to processing your full resolution files, export your time-lapse sequence as low-resolution JPEGs. This gives you files that are a fraction of the size but still large enough to give you a close approximation of what your final result will look like. This preview process will take, minutes instead of half an hour or more, and you can make all your creative decisions that much quicker. Then, once you know exactly how many frames you want, and you're happy with the result, go back and process your full resolution TIFFs with that same frame count. You'll only have to wait through that long processing time once, and you'll know the result is exactly what you want. Right, back to the workflow. Now you've got all your frames loaded as layers, the next step is to select them all, then go to Layer, Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. This bundles all those layers into a single smart object that we can process as a group. And this is where the magic happens. With your smart object selected, go to Layer, Smart Objects, Stack Mode, and select Main. And there it is. Photoshop has just averaged every single pixel across all 100 frames, and the result is this temporal composite that shows the entire storm's evolution as a single, cohesive image. Now, as I alluded to earlier, there's something really important to understand, and that's the number of frames you stack directly affects the aesthetic of your final image. So let's say you stack 20 or 30 frames. You get a result that has more urgency, more visible movement and texture in the clouds. You can still see distinct shapes and structure. Stack more frames though, say 100, 150, 200, and the result becomes dreamier and more ethereal, more abstract. The movement blends into smooth gradients. Both are valid creative choices, and the beauty is that you can experiment with different amounts from the same shoot to see what serves your vision best. Now, there's one more critical variable I need to mention, and it's your choice of shutter speed, which I'll expand on more in an upcoming video. But for now, when you're capturing the original frames, your choice of shutter speed fundamentally changes what the mean stack will look like. To illustrate both this point and the versatility of mean stacking, instead of shooting a long time lapse at 1 frame per second, I'll shoot a single burst of 20 frames at 20 frames per second, which, that's the maximum burst speed of my Canon R6. If you shoot each frame with a relatively slow shutter speed, say 1/20th of a second, each individual frame already has motion blur baked in. When you stack them, you're blending overlapping blur trails together, with the result looking very similar to that of a traditional ND filter long exposure. But if you shoot each frame with a fast shutter speed, say 1/500th or 1/1000th of a second, each frame is frozen sharp. When you stack those, you're showing discrete positions of the subject across time. The result is a more stepped or strobed quality. It's a unique computational look that you can't actually achieve with a traditional long exposure. Understanding this gives you better control over your final aesthetic. For this storm sequence, I shot at a relatively slow shutter speed because I was trying to capture lightning as well as time-lapse the storm itself, and for that I kept the shutter open for as long as aesthetically possible. But for now, let's focus on what makes this result special. This is what I love about this technique. It's not just a technical workaround for long exposure photography. It's a fundamentally different way of seeing time. A traditional photograph captures a single instant. A traditional long exposure blurs time into a continuous stream. But a mean stacked composite like this, it shows you the character of an entire event. It shows the storm's journey, its personality. And the fact that I can create this from the same sequence I'm using for a time-lapse video, that I never needed a filter, never risked overexposure, and had complete creative control over how long the effective exposure was, that's not just convenient, that's powerful. You know, there's no risk of overexposure, there's no hot pixels, there's no noise, because that is what this function was originally designed for. There's no expensive filters required, and there's infinite creative flexibility in post. So if you shoot storms, clouds, coastal scenes, even waterfalls if you know what you're doing, anything that moves basically, and anything you're already shooting as a time-lapse, this technique will completely transform your workflow. If I've convinced you to use this method, then do let me know in the comments. And alternatively, if you think single shot ND filters are better, then let me hear your argument as well. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe and let me know in the comments what subjects you'd like to see me tackle with this technique. Cheers, and as always, thanks for being here.